Riveting content. Empowering your life. Welcome to the Sphere. This episode is sponsored by Houston Housewives of Finance. For more information on increasing your cash flow, becoming your own money manager, and to schedule your complimentary personal finance strategy, contact the Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463. Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, Dr. Ashandra Batiste understands that one of the biggest obstacles is dental fear. The vision at Elite Dental Wellness is to ensure every patient is treated with respect, ultimate care, patience, and love. Call us today to make an appointment at area code 713-789-8680. Looking to advertise? Join the Sphere's vast demographic reach of thousands of people all over the world. Send an email today to advertise@thesphere.tv or call us at area code 832-772-7789.
And thank you for joining us for another riveting episode of Society Now, the show that endeavors to bring you content that invokes, inspires, and excites. This is not fake news. Oh, these are not alternative facts, are they? This is Society Now. My name is Kira Laws, and you can follow me on Instagram at The Modern Day Cindy. That's Cindy with an I, not a Y. And I have my handsome co-host with me today.
Hey, what's going on? This your man, Carin Laws, a.k.a. Senior Wapo. Do me a favor. Follow me on all social media platforms at Senior Wapo 713. That's SENORGUAPO 713. We are super excited to have the great show for you today, talking about all things news internationally, nationally, locally. We want to give you our perspective. And listen, I just can't wait to dive into some of these topics. You know, I beg your pardon.
You want to talk about that off the cuff? I mean, I guess we could. I
beg your pardon.
You beg my pardon?
I beg Trump's pardon.
Somebody needs to beg somebody's pardon around here. I mean, I sat today and I read the news, and I actually also look at different content that comes up in on different shows and platforms. And the one thing that was really interesting is everybody was talking about the pardon conversation. Now, what we're talking about is President Trump announced, via Twitter, of course, that he has spoken to many legal scholars or legal professionals, and they have all said that he would be, if necessary, he could be able to pardon himself if deemed necessary. However, he wasn't in that type of situation to have to do such. Now, what do we think about that? Now, me being I agree with many persons that chimed in on this, and I believe like the purpose of the judicial system is for checks and balances. I don't think legally or even ethically a person should be able to pardon themselves out of trouble. You see what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that lends itself to corruption. And I'm not saying that this is something corruption is happening right now. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is when you're able to say that you can take yourself out of a situation, then that doesn't allow you to be checked for liability. What do you think about that, Caitlin?
Absolutely. You know, it's one of those things, man, that there's this thing called conflict of interest that exists within every sort of, business entity, whether it's a nonprofit, government, for-profit, education, retail, electronics, IT, whatever the case may be. There's this thing in business, that is known as, a conflict of interest. And the president absolutely has a constitutional right to, and duty, honestly, to pardon some people. You know, that's one of the things that most presidents do when they're going out of office. They get a list of pardons every year, probably every day. I'm not sure how often, but I'm sure it's super frequently. But on their way out, they issue these pardons, right? And so it would be an absolute conflict of interest. It would be an absolute tragedy and travesty for the president to be able to pardon himself. That means he would legally be able to do something illegal.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? And that just doesn't make sense. Now, there are a lot of things in this country in the founding that the founding fathers did not have foresight on, right? But there are things that they had a lot of foresight on. And someone who's a political scientist, I've studied the Constitution. You studied the Constitution from a legal perspective, and all the common law classes that you've had and have taught and taken. And the framers were intentional, and they were very, very wise in a lot of things with this living document called the Constitution. And so they did. It's just not in there. It's just not expressly. It's not an implied power, nor is it an explicit power. It's just not.
I think that's
a lie.
I think so. The issue is avoiding the slippery slope, right? This is the issue, avoiding the slippery slope. And what you said is absolutely spot on. We have to be careful not to give power to someone to prevent them from being, like I said, checked. When powers need to be checked. Hence, that's why we have the branches of government that we have. We have these branches of government for checks and balances. And I think that, if in fact we move into a situation where we see that, someone is not adhering to the power of checks and balances and or overlooking it and or overriding it, I think that, the people need to speak up. This is a situation for the people. The people were explicitly considered in the Constitution when it was written, and the power is given to the people to, activate their voice, lift their voice, and be heard. So I think absolutely this is one of those situations where persons who are not clear on it need to ask their legislators about it. We need to research a little bit more. We need to get people involved. This is where you have town hall meetings. You have discussions like, okay, well, what are the powers that are given to the people? What are the powers that are given to the branches of government? Who has the right to override powers, and to what extent? I think this is an opportunity to just everyone to elevate education. Educationally, everyone needs to elevate their knowledge, because I like a lot of people like, well, I know I went to school, and I don't believe I've ever heard that before. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. It just means it's an opportunity for everyone to be enlightened. So everyone needs to be on the same page as what powers are given to what branch and or what authority figures, and what can and can't they do in situations where they might be implicated. Absolutely.
To all the adults who are listening, those who have students, it doesn't matter what age, show this article, especially at the high school level, and even college level, show this article, or find one of the articles. There are a million out there right now about this, and let them know why it is important that you need to pay attention in history class, right? Or in political science, because you can have people that are in power trying to assume or trying to do something that they cannot. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And if you are not educated enough, if you're not up to speed on what's really going on or what is allowed, not saying that you have to be a scholar, right? But if you're not informed, you'll fall for the okie doke quickly.
Absolutely.
Quickly. So and then it's just the pompousness of our current celebrity in chief. It's just it just keeps going. Like you was.
I think so. What you're saying, I think there is. There's an opportunity for everyone, especially people that are in authority with access to that type of authority, to operate in humility. I think that's the bigger thing. We've seen great shifts, especially in the past 10 years, 12 years, with 10 to 12 years with the changing in tides from one president to the next, with having the first African-American president in office for 2 terms back to back. We've seen a theme of change of how we engage the people, and we've seen a change in themes and how we actually communicate. 15 years ago, social media was not what it is. It was barely what it is, right? It was Facebook, and what was the other thing people use? MySpace. Right? It's
Black Planet.
Yeah. And so we didn't have access to information like we do right now. And so now we're getting access to information, and the information that we're getting, it's like, okay, we're getting it so quickly. And Dave Chappelle said it best. We're in the age of spin. If you're not paying attention, and if you're not doing your best to educate yourself, to read on your own, to be enlightened, to actually communicate with people that are above you on your level, and even be humble enough to walk with people that are not on your level, to actually get a lot of different perspectives, you will be misguided on information. And I think that's where we're in the age of spin. We're in the age of spin.
Absolutely.
We're in an age of spin. It's crazy, but okay.
Shout out to Dave Chappelle for that. That was dope.
Dave Chappelle, y'all. Yes, he did. He did 2 specials on Netflix, but this one specific was not a specific special. Was not part of his Netflix deal, but it is on Netflix, and it's called The Age of Spin. Y'all have to watch his stand-up. It's amazing. That's my plug for Dave Chappelle, because everybody knows I love Dave Chappelle. Okay, fast forward. National anthem. Back to our president. So the national anthem. So in the past week, we heard a lot about the national anthem. We heard a lot of, again, misunderstanding about what can and can't be done in terms of the teams and what the NFL says is the rule versus what the team owners are allowed to do. And that has created a lot of controversy, because some people feel like it's a victory, and a lot of people don't see it as a victory, because it still puts the power inside the owner's hands, because they're saying that the athletes don't necessarily have to, the football players don't necessarily have to come on the field, but if they do come on the field, they must stand. There might be a little caveat in there that we're not quite clear on, is will they be made to come on the field if it's in contract, which creates a bigger issue, right? Well, to further, talk about the NFL or the national anthem controversy, remember the Philadelphia Eagles did win the Super Bowl. And
Shout out to the Eagles.
Shout out to the Eagles. And as customary, usually any winning team in the United States is always invited to the White House. Well, the Eagles, some of the team did not want to go. So they were going to just take some of the persons that did want to go as representatives of the team to the White House. The president felt like that was dishonorable. And he felt like, once again, if y'all can't come and stand, then nobody can come. So he disinvited the Eagles. Now, this is a breaking story. I'm sure we're going to hit more information on it, but it's a breaking story like in the last 30 minutes or so about them being disinvited. Because the thing was, they were like, well, some people didn't feel like they should have to go if they don't agree. And that should be okay. But here's another issue where we're talking about power and authority, usurping someone's rights. What do you think about that?
Well, one of my favorite defensive backs, Malcolm Jenkins, he led the charge with the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of the protests. He didn't always kneel, but he would stand with the fist up. He would make it some sort of demonstrative protest. And so, it's not shocking to me, number one, that the Eagles are only going to send a delegation, because the Eagles were split in terms of how they wanted to handle the protest. You had quite a few active protesters that were on the Eagles team. And so Trump is staying on message, and he's staying on trend in terms of wanting people to support the national anthem. The problem that I'm having is no one is really, and it's been said before, but the problem that I'm having is again, we're in the age of spin, and the Republicans, which Trump is the leader of the Republican Party right now because he's the president. He's the highest ranking Republican in the country, right? So he's the leader of the party. They're spinning it, taking it off of what's going on, right? Not only is it not about the anthem, right, in terms of the protests, but the anthem in and of itself is celebrating slavery, which has been made illegal with the 13th Amendment, right? So I'm very confused on why we still, off of tradition, are holding to this tenet of freedom, of liberty, of justice, right? In terms of all of these tenets that the U.S. lives on, but the song that we sing to express freedom and liberty and justice and equality talks about a damn practice that's not about freedom, justice, liberty, and equality. So I just don't understand it. I don't get it. Not only have they hijacked the message, they've completely just said we're not going to even worry about the second verse.
I think that just tells you that we need to take a deeper dive on that. And speaking of things that we need to take a deeper dive on, we really start analyzing what's most important in life. Some of the other things we need to analyze are things like what?
Like our finances,
Absolutely.
man. You know what I'm saying? We have to be analytical in what we do in terms of our spending, in terms of our saving, in terms of our financial picture. As such, this portion of the show is sponsored by the Houston Housewives of Finance. Did you know that only 4 states in the United States offer financial education? 33% or more than 77 million Americans don't pay their bills on time. 39% of Americans carry credit card debt from month to month, and 39% of adults say they don't have enough savings Do not become one of these statistics. Let Houston Housewives of Finance advise you on increasing your cash flow and becoming your own money manager by scheduling your complimentary personal financial strategy. Contact Houston Housewives of Finance today at 1-844-700-4463 or email us at info@houstonhousewivesoffinance.com and ask how you can participate in a complimentary, again, free financial literacy workshop near you. Houston Housewives of Finance are the new faces of the new age of financial services. So it is important that we as Society Now sow back into you, sow back into all of our listeners, all of our viewers in terms of how to get your financial picture in order. Not only do you need to check out Houston Housewives of Finance, but go holler at the Money Factor. That is another show here on Society Now, and they talk about investing. They talk about all different banking practices and legal ramifications of certain things, and they talk about how to make sure that your financial house is as clean as possible. So do me a favor, after you finish our podcast, listening to this one, go ahead and go back to the website, go back to iTunes, go back to Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and subscribe to the Money Factor as well. Let's just keep it moving, though, okay? Let's keep it moving because we talked about Trump twice. I don't want to give him no more play. Like, he gets on my nerves. But let's talk about someone. Let's go to the faith-based arena for a second and holler at our boy, Jesse Duplantis. Now, I'm not sure if those of you who are listening and are watching know who Jesse Duplantis is, but he's a big-time televangelist, big-time televangelist, been so for a number of years, a white guy. But I call him a Christian comedian because if you listen to Jesse Duplantis, his messages are extremely comical, very, very funny. But there's been a headline and some things going around saying that Jesse Duplantis is asking for some money, $54 million to buy a private jet. Well, he has come out saying, nah, it's not true. I'm not going to do that. He just, and it's interesting too, because as a man of faith, that happens a lot. People always talk about whether or not preachers, teachers, clergymen, whatever, should be men of means or and of financial substance. And that's a different conversation for a different day. However, regardless of who you are, $54 million is a lot of money, right? And Jesse Duplantis is saying that it's not going to happen. I'm not doing it. Leave me alone. So we got to keep watch of that because people are paying tithes, people are paying offering, people are really sowing into ministries, and you want to make sure that folks' money is going where it says. He actually he still wants that snazzy new jet, but he wants to make it clear that he's not asking money for it, is what the article is saying. He just wants followers to believe the aircraft into existence, So I am an ardent believer that faith without works is dead. So you can believe it all you want, but the work got to be done, Jesse. So make sure you're just doing the work, and I believe that you are because I support you, man. But he's not asking for the people to pay for this jet. Thank God, because that would be a tragedy. I'm telling you. So next, let's keep it moving. Janet Jackson. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty, she called the police over concern for her one-year-old son. I can never say his name right. I think it's Elsa Almana. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Sheriff's Deputy Kimberly Alexander said deputies made a welfare check on behalf of Jackson Saturday evening. Deputies responded to the 2200 block of south of Pacific Coast Highway, where the child was found with his pops, estranged husband with some Almana, and they used to be together. Alexander said deputies determined that everything was fine and that there was no incident. And this is what's interesting to me about cases like this, right? I think when the police are called, they should always go to the scene because you just never really know what's happening, right? Especially when there's a child involved. I'm a father of two. Shout out to Essex and Eden. Daddy loves you all. But I just really, I get kind of nervous sometimes, man. I get so nervous when the police are called to residences, I don't care what kind of money, I don't care what kind of status, I don't care what kind of fame you have. If you're a person of color, there's a risk associated. Now, when you flip that over, when it's a domestic situation, it seems that the tide turns against the man automatically. And so I'm glad that this wasn't the case. I know my wife has had a number of different colleagues who have dealt with legal cases where they may have had a client who was a man who, it was a domestic situation, and something happened. The man did nothing wrong or was not physical, but the man ultimately has to go to jail. The man ultimately gets detained for a second, or the man ultimately is the one who has to bear the burden of the legal system when the police are called out to a home. So I'm glad that wasn't the case, and I'm glad that the child was okay. I'm glad that the baby is there was nothing going on between the two. But again, I'm always kind of nervous when the police go out. Number one, to a home with a black person. Janet Jackson is 100% black. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. Number two, when it's a domestic situation, the man, oftentimes, regardless of his race, of his ethnicity, has to deal with, need to leave the premises or something. So it doesn't seem that was the case. But we just want to be thankful that I can never say his name right. Elsa, Aisa, I don't know.
Well,
Forgive
so
me.
the thing about that whole story is that she, when they broke up or when their marriage ended, she cited domestic issues at that time. And so I think, she said that she felt one of the things, and I'm paraphrasing big time, I can't say that, I'm not quoting, paraphrasing, that she cited domestic issues, and that, when she married him, I think she did not take in consideration his background and, the lifestyle, his expectation of what he expected her to do once they were married with a child. And it's a different flow for him because they're from two different places, but two different belief systems. And so I guess he actually had custody or was going on an outing, and she wanted to ensure that he was okay. And so, like I said, celebrities are just like us because I think we assume that money takes away issues. And I think I was talking to you and or you and someone else, and you're talking about money doesn't necessarily take away an issue, but it's convenient.
Yeah.
Money just makes things that we usually deal with. When you have money, it just makes it you're able to differentiate what's convenient versus what's inconvenient, right? So money just allows you access to things versus when you don't have money, it becomes a hardship, right?
Yeah.
So for them, it's a different story because they're dealing in this bubble where they don't want people in their lives exaggerating things, but at the same time, they're living their life.
Yeah, man. And we want to continue to live our life, especially out loud through all of our platforms like Facebook, and talk to the people at Facebook Live. We want you to subscribe to our show on all the major platforms, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher, and review our show in iTunes with constructive feedback. Share this Facebook Live post and the entire show with your family and friends, and donate to our mission to bring enriched and inspiring content each and every week. You can donate at, you ready? Get your pen out, www.thesphere.tv/donate. We need your coin.
We need your coin. And we prefer the money that folds. No, we would appreciate the money that jingles, but we prefer the money that folds.
Coming to America.
We appreciate
that boy good.
He has talent. That boy got talent. Give it up for Sexual Chocolate.
Sexual Chocolate.
Sexual Chocolate. Okay, now let me listen to something else. So another conversation that was going on last week. It's interesting. It's funny, but it's not funny. But it called a lot of people to the carpet, especially those who say they believe, Christian believers, right? So a very famous man of faith, Jesse Duplantis, made a comment, and he was talking to the persons that he was with, and he said that, hey, he believed that the Lord wanted him to buy a jet. He said he was believing for $54 million for a private jet because he said when the Lord came back, he wouldn't be riding a donkey. Now, and if anybody has ever heard Jesse Duplantis, he said that in joking, but he was serious about the jet. And when he said it, he was like, he clarified his name. He said, I just wanted people to understand, I'm not asking them for money. I want them to believe that I can get a private jet for this purpose. And I think it's a bigger conversation because persons of faith have always been questioned about what they're believing for. And it kind of divided the church. I don't know if it was split in half or split in thirds, but a lot of people were like, that's crazy. believers, a lot of people were like, I believe that. A lot of people were like, he probably shouldn't have said it. What are your thoughts on it?
So for me, I mean, you got to be careful what you say because people will spin it. You know, people listen when we listen, we don't just listen with our ears. We listen with our brains and our experience, right?
Absolutely.
And our experience is based upon what we've seen, understood, heard, what we've dealt with, etc. So, you know, the money in church, it's had a tumultuous in terms of big preachers. It's had a tumultuous ride.
Absolutely.
Because
even the church that I attended for many years, the pastors, I would say you don't have to worry about your money or your honey in here.
Right.
And so it's sad that people have to make those type of statements.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so it's one of those things that it's interesting. So I kind of lean toward the fact of, I'm not going to say he shouldn't have said it because you do want people to believe with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree with that, you know, the household of faith and a community of believers. But you just really, 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 really have to be wise on what you say. Maybe put it in a written statement so all can see and nobody can say, you know what I'm saying, this is what I heard. No, it's in writing right here. I don't know what the workaround is because even there, I do understand the that's kind of dangerous too. But it's tough, man.
Well, I wouldn't even say the danger is in putting it in writing per se. I would say the problem is that you have to have tough skin when you go out and say you're saying something in faith.
Facts.
Anytime you say you're saying something in faith, you have to have the tough skin to back it up because people will come for you. Now, I think that, you know, the fact that he felt like he needed to clarify, I think that was, you know, great. I honestly believe, I want to believe that he probably clarified it at the time he said it.
Yeah.
But people heard what they wanted to hear, and he probably needed to backpedal and say it again for those who didn't hear it the first time. Because there's so many times where a person will say everything they need to say in one statement, but we are, like Kayla mentioned, we hear some things stick out and other things don't. They heard $54 million, a jet. And
the preacher want it.
Right, and Jesus is not going to come back on a donkey. And I'm sure the conversation was not that quick.
Facts.
It wasn't that brief.
Facts.
And if it was that brief, it probably was in context, right? It was in context about what faith is. So it just, you know, it gives you an idea of what people are battling when they make statements out loud, whether they're persons of faith or no faith. When you make a statement, and you're speaking to a general audience, you have to be careful or be mindful. I didn't say careful, be mindful of everybody that's listening to you is not always going to have your best interest at heart. And so some people will take what you said, and again, the age of spin, they will spin it to make a conversation because it for some people, it boosts their ratings even if they don't have a platform, right?
Facts.
It just makes people listen to them even more.
Facts.
So, you know, shout out to those who believe in faith for whatever they're believing in, because I can't tell you that you're not supposed to believe, and that's just not my position. I will never take that position unless you believe for something that ain't yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to totally disregard that. Okay, so let's talk about something else, and I think it's interesting.
It's your boy again, the orange guy.
What is he talking about?
Man, this dude is. So he's been running around talking about that black employment is at an all-time low, right?
Oh my, do we believe him?
So yes, but that's not the full picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing, you know, that a lot of politicians do, people in power do. Period. They extrapolate something without giving, and you said it earlier, the context, right, or the framework by which it exists, so that you can understand everything. And he
pretty much was quoting. I mean, he gave us a stat that's accurate, but it's only accurate when you look at it through a certain lens.
Yeah.
So this conversation has been going on forever. It's been going on for a very long time, but we look at stuff in a very narrow, very narrow lens. So we talk about that unemployment rate is down for African Americans, and it's the lowest it's been. Now, we can contribute that number to a lot of different factors. It probably started way before he got in office.
He's
only been
in office. The trend started in 14.
Yeah, so he's only been in office for like a year and a half.
About 100 days, yeah.
Right, so he hasn't been in office long enough to make that type of impact. And when you actually look at it, one of the things that people are saying is that black persons in general are very fearful since he's been in office. But the majority are very fearful. There's some things, they said a few factors that people need to consider. We need to look at what's contributing to the shrinking unemployment rate. And are we looking at the right numbers? Because there's some numbers that they don't even take in consideration. They don't take in consideration those who are unemployed and will remain unemployed. They don't take in consideration the fluctuation in employment. They actually do take a slice of a specific type of group of persons to claim what to get these numbers from, because persons who have been unemployed for a long time are not necessarily factored into this increase of persons with jobs now. I mean, it's the same thing when you look at educational systems in schools when they talk about how many students have been hired. You want to say that everybody in the graduating class is hired, but there's other factors that they have to look at to make that number a real number. It can't be everybody, because some people you might not look at, because you might say, okay, those persons continued on after they graduated to another educational system. Do you include that person in the number?
Exactly.
So how do you actually get this number? Is this a real number?
So and no, it's not a real number. What the article is saying that it doesn't count the people who are jobless and actively seeking work as unemployed. You see what I'm saying? That means that people who are unemployed but have given up on job search are not included. It doesn't. The official term from the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is discouraged workers. And then when you start looking, yes, it may be 6%, but it's still higher. It's still the highest among all minority groups, right? You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things. So it is it very much is a skewed headline. It very much is something that's very difficult to it's just not accurate.
It's not accurate.
It's just not accurate.
And it's crazy because when you think about it, I think about dealing with unemployment versus, I think we talked about this, versus underemployment. And that's something we need to talk about too, because some people that are seeking jobs are underemployed. And when they get these jobs, they're filling the gap of unemployment. But truthfully, they may not be what we consider truly employed if they're working 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And they have loads of education, but their education doesn't match what they're doing.
Another thing that makes it difficult is when you look at unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is not a sequitur, if you will, or an accurate indicator of poverty level. Because of underemployment. Yeah, you can be employed, right, working full time, making $10 an hour, which is not a living wage.
It's not a living wage.
You see what I'm saying? It's not a living. So you will be under the poverty level. So you still don't change the poverty level of a demographic, of an ethnicity, of whatever, you know what I'm saying, a group we're talking about. And so again, it's not necessarily an accurate indicator of economic self-sufficiency just because you have a job.
And so this is such a deep conversation to have, and I was so glad we have Carin Pinto in the building, y'all.
Hey,
Carin Pinto in the building. Okay, I'm extra.
CP, what up?
I'm extra.
I'm so
She's in the building.
Y'all.
Yay!
I missed you guys.
Oh, we missed you! Yay! Okay. Well, okay,
Wow.
So we could talk to her about it too. I mean, it's talking even as a younger person, coming into employment. We're all taught, hey, you go and get your education. This is what I was taught. Get your education, you do well in school, and you will get you a great job. That is not the truth, because great is fluid and success is fluid. Like, I can make the greatest job. I tell students this now, no one's really looking at your transcript when you graduate. I hate to be the one to say that. They really want to know if you graduated, but they're really not looking at your transcript. They're really not evaluating how many A's you have, because at the end of the day, your A's are not going to be the qualifier of the type of job you get or how much they pay you.
Right.
And so underemployment is a real thing. And we'll talk more about that, but I want to talk about that in a second. We have to come back to that. Okay, but we need to talk about how we keep ourselves smiling in an age of spending. This age of spending. I got to talk. Y'all, if anybody knows Dave Chappelle, tell them to holler at me. Age of spending. So this portion of our show is sponsored by Elite Dental Wellness. At Elite Dental Wellness, our vision is to create a welcoming practice that will offer exceptional dental care and a lifetime of dental wellness. We are committed to the finest possible oral care and the overall health and well-being of our patients. Elite Dental Wellness is built upon a foundation of integrity, expertise, and service. Through our commitment to modern dentistry, continuing education, and a friendly atmosphere, we strive to make our patients feel that they are a part of our family. Dentistry can be scary, daunting, and uncomfortable. Dr. Batiste and her team work tirelessly to ensure your comfort. Make your appointment today with Dr. Chandra Batiste at Elite Dental Wellness by calling 713-789-8680. Again, the number is 713-789-8680. Elite Dental Wellness. We got to get those smiles going, y'all. Even now, even when all this craziness is going. Seriously. I mean,
Facts.
seriously.
Facts.
Seriously. Y'all see that? Bling. 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 But no, seriously. So I think, when I think about this particular headline story, I think about how many persons I know that are not feeling the impact of being employed because they feel like the data is not reflective of their situation. Because I don't think we talk about, again, when they say this, we need to talk about socioeconomic measurements that go into this, because I don't think underemployment and how many jobs a person has actually goes into this number. Because yes, I might have gotten a job and I might have been there for a year or whatever the qualifier is, 60 days, but this may be one of many jobs I'm doing just to pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
Can we all relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been underemployed. Is what it is.
I feel like I'm still.
Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? I've been underemployed. Education says that you or not education, but the data says that at a certain education level, multiple degrees, you should have a certain salary. You know what I'm saying? There have been times where I wasn't anywhere near that salary with the education, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you look at a number of different factors. Again, the drivers into this are just not clear. Now it could talk about I'm trying not to get too academic. It could be negatively skewed or positively skewed, which means it could talk about if it sways you one way or the other as a kind of an indicator, but it's just not an accurate indicator of what's more important is economic self-sufficiency. You know what I'm saying? Having a job doesn't mean that you're economically self-sufficient. It just doesn't.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all had jobs in college and we was broke as hell.
And I think but
we had jobs.
That's a larger conversation, economic self-sufficiency, because I don't even think that a lot of persons in minority groups understand what that really means. We really push people to have a job, but what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Because you cannot live. You cannot really live in fullness if you're stressed about things, because how much you make is actually connected to, when I say how much you make, but how you're living is connected to your overall health and well-being, right? And so if you're stressed about like little stuff, what we consider little, right, or what the world may consider little, if you're stressed about making ends meet, you cannot, say you're fully capable of, living a full life. You just can't do it.
So Carin, let me ask you. You spent some time in New York, so you're in the advertising world, so you've seen cats that make a lot of money in the advertising world.
Seen cats that made no money.
And you've seen cats that made no money
Yes.
in the advertising world, right? Because that's just the world. It's very polarizing.
Yep.
What has been your experience in terms of their conversations, either the ones that got it or don't? You know what I'm saying? What has been your experience with them in terms of their conversations?
In terms of
like employment, like do they want more, or do they, obviously the folks who don't have it want it, but with the guys who are execs and the people that you work with on these teams, what's their talks?
Well, I feel like once you get to a certain level in certain industries, that the younger people coming up, they want to make it to that point. And so the pay at a particular level, it is almost non-negotiable, because they know so many people are willing to accept the lower pay for the experience and some of the companies that are offering these jobs and internships. So amongst the younger people, it's like, I'm gonna go through this period of time to make it eventually and get the experience I need so that I can be gainfully employed at a certain point in life and be able to sustain myself. But I think that nowadays, even amongst my peers, a lot more of us are thinking about, okay, I have a job, but how can I be self-sustainable? Or what can I start doing? What are my passions to help me kind of get to that next level financially? And like you said, also thinking about estate planning, Roth IRAs, and all these other things that will actually help you be self-sufficient in the future.
And if you want to know how to be self-sufficient, again, go holler at the folks at the Money Factor, baby. They'll tell you how to be self-sufficient. Or the Houston House of Finance.
I love it.
Get at them too.
I love it. Yes. But no, seriously though, I think in I think the conversation has to continue with what we're doing, and we need to pay attention when these, again, the age of spin, we need to pay attention to when these facts are thrown out there. It really does dilute the conversation when it comes to people, when we're people of color, when they're asking for equality, when they ask for equal pay, when minorities and different genders are asking for equal pay, when it dilutes the conversation when you throw these numbers out here, because it makes it look like the wage gap is really getting smaller. It is, but only for a certain type of person, and only for it really does make the conversation, because then the next statement is, what else do you want?
Again, you said something that bothers me: the wage gap. So if the wage gap is getting smaller, that's great. But if the wage gap is still under poverty, that doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. If the wage gap goes from $8 to $10, you still not a living wage.
Well, and we've had a conversation about this.
What are we supposed to do?
No. So the things that, and this conversation can go on for a long time, but the things that are connected to how much you make. Even when you talk about benefits, health benefits, if you want to be included in, say, for instance, Obamacare, if you don't have make a certain amount of money, you're not considered poor enough, right? Yep. But if you make too much money, you don't qualify for the credits, and then you can't afford insurance. And so all the fluctuation that goes into what employment is. But if you're unemployed in different states, considering like even Texas, you can't even get Medicare. They only give it to those persons that are pregnant with child, and with the children have it. So if you're a woman and you have a kid, but outside of that, you don't qualify for it. So it's a lot that goes into these numbers that we're not seeing. So we definitely need the social scientists to start educating people and giving them all the factors that go into breaking down the unemployment and what really goes into who are they actually looking at, and what makes this number real, if it's really real or not. For sure. Okay, now let's talk about something else. Okay, so I'm asking the question, are we becoming way too sensitive in society, especially as people of color, when it comes to, I guess when it comes to being called out, or when it comes to what we consider being targeted because of the color of our skin? There was a black legislator in Ohio, and she said that the security guard, who happens to be a police officer, cherry-picked her. And when she was going into the state office, that she was told that she didn't look like she belonged there. And she was like, I felt like he called me out because he was black, because I'm black. And he was like, no. I mean, I'm saying that you don't look like you belong here because you look young. I can actually see him recanting his statement, because she does look very young. Mm-hmm. She looks very young, but she assumed that he meant because she was black. Now, we can't really say what he was thinking, but I can see him actually trying to recant real quickly, because he realized I'm talking to a black woman. She might think that I'm thinking about her color, but she actually does look young to me. So she kicked up some dust and said what she had to say. And she called the guy out, and she made it a point to contact some people and let them know, hey, I feel like he cherry picked me because I'm black. I want to know, was she being, just looking at her, could she have been being too sensitive? Because there's a lot to that.
That's tough. I think she was justified in feeling like she felt just because of society.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I think we have to use reason and wisdom in every situation.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. So. Like you said, the way society is right now, it will make you think that anytime someone says something to you, especially with being a person of color, it makes you think, are you trying to come for me?
Yeah, and it's also a dangerous place to be in, because we as a people shouldn't feel like when we walk into a place that we are lesser than, or that someone's looking at me like a certain type of way, because that does mess with your psyche. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to also remain confident in who we are and not think about race, because it starts making you act differently without you even knowing it.
And it's so funny. So I tell people this all the time. I actually I'll talk about that in a minute, but I don't think about race the way, and I don't think many people I know think about the race the way I feel like race is looked at with persons of color, like black persons and the Latinos. I don't think that. I've never walked into a place, and when I saw white people or majority of white people, I thought, oh my God, something bad is going to happen. That's never the thought that comes to mind. Regardless of if I see somebody that looks kind of sketchy, I don't pile everybody in the same group and say, oh my goodness, let me, you know what I mean? Although I know that they're not immune to and or not included in a group of persons that could possibly could cause harm. I don't think like that. But it's interesting that we have had as as overall race have had to deal with that. Okay, I might go somewhere and somebody might look at me a certain way. Like I told my husband one time, I said, you are the most educated person I know, but I'm always concerned about him because he can never turn off his blackness. Like he can't just, okay, now accept me because I'm look different today. You know, no, he's going to be who he's going to be. And I don't want him to ever stray from that. But it's unfortunate that we have to think about, okay, when I go to this place today, I have to do this, this, and this to make these people feel comfortable. It is a very, it's a headache. I mean, I worked in a place like that for years. And I mean, and I was like, we would have conversations of like, I can't do what I really want to do because I might be too black, because I hear the comments they make. I said, but I would never make that comment around them. You know what I mean?
So I agree with what both of you are saying. But also, let's take it back to the security personnel. Let's just ask the right question. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Ask the right question. If he really did mean that, or if you're a person in authority or power, ask what you are really trying. What are you really trying to say? You see what I'm saying? So, we have to be insensitive, whether we're too sensitive or not. I don't really know. I think sometimes we are. Honestly, I do think sometimes we are sensitive, or we take advantage of an opportunity. I think
the climate.
The climate. I think that happens. That's human nature, though, right? Mm-hmm. Humans do that. But if you were worried about her being young, ma'am, you look young. May I see your ID? You see what I'm saying? Because that's you can legally do that. And are you supposed to be here? Because that.
Well, again, let me restate his quote. His quote was, "You don't look like a legislator. You look too young." So he said, don't look like a legislator. Then a trooper tried to clear up his tongue slip. You look too young. So I feel like the way I read that was, I wouldn't have read more into it.
Yeah, I would not have. If that's what he really said, that wouldn't have bothered me.
You don't look like a legislator. Look like a legislator. The trooper tried to clear up his tongue slip. You look too young. I would not have looked into that as anything more than.
If that's really what he said,
and this is her quote.
I would not have been offended whatsoever.
He said all of that before she questioned him.
Yeah, something like so.
Yeah, she
so I think. I don't know if it was.
I love you, sister, because you a sister, but nah.
I don't know if it was accompanied by a certain look, or did he stare from head to toe, or he was evaluated. Granted, he is an older man. Apparently, he looked like he was supposed to be in his 60s or something like that. So it might have been something like that. But this is her perception. But I'm like, I don't know what goes on in Ohio. I'm not from Ohio, so I can only talk about my experience here where I live.
Ohio's mad divided because Mike Pence is from Ohio, and
exactly.
he was the governor of Ohio, and he put them through hell politically.
And maybe
he put them through hell, and so it is mad divided. It really is. But even still, don't look for a reason though.
But what I was going to say,
jump out the window.
But maybe her experience, because she is a junior legislator, maybe her experience, maybe her experience dealing in politics has been that she's always been discriminated against. So she probably thought sensitivity on her sleeve. She probably thought, I'm walking into another situation where I'm trying to look at both ends of it. I'm walking into a situation where here's another person who's looking at me because I'm, you know what I mean? And not only, and she knows she's young. Obviously, she knows she's young, but she's like, I'm young and black.
And a woman.
And a woman. So there was a true minority.
Triple minority.
A triple.
Yeah.
So she probably was like, I don't feel like it today. Don't come for me. I'm calling somebody. So, I mean, he happened to make his comment on the wrong day. He probably, he might have been genuinely, you look too young, because he might have been saying, all the people in here look like me. What are you doing here? You know what I mean? But it might not have been meant to be offensive on a black note. But okay. So let's talk about education equality. Oh yeah.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Whoa.
That hit her where it hurt. Education equality. Well, we know in the United States we have been facing some serious discussions since the last presidential election, about what the Department of Education should be focused on, where the money should go, and the leader of the education, the Secretary of Education, what she's looking at. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. Before we get into that, before we just jump right into that, let's talk about who has sponsored this portion of the show.
Who is it?
I think it's the Sphere.
I think
it's the Sphere. Okay. Are you starting your business and looking for a place to advertise? Do you have a need to reach out to thousands of people across the world to build your brand or sell your product? If so, get your product placement and advertising needs handled right here at the Sphere. We offer a wide variety of content delivery platforms, including iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many, many more. Plus, we have a vast demographic reach within the United States, as well as modern countries across the globe. Our enriched content and inspiring dialogue, coupled with your strategic ad, is surely to hit the mark every time. Call us today at area code 832-772-7789 or send an email over to advertise@thesphere.tv. Again, the number is 832-772-7789 or email us at advertise@thesphere.tv. Hey.
Hey.
So that's what we're looking for, y'all. Y'all need to come and jump on this bandwagon. Do it. Okay. I'll say education equality. Seriously though. So the NAACP, filed a federal lawsuit against Betty DeVos and the Department of Education. They say that pretty much that, according to the Washington Post, that the Education Department under the Secretary of Education has been dismissing complaints that place an unreasonable burden on the department and dispense with cases filed the same person or a group against multiple institutions, and they call it a tactic commonly used to show a pattern of violations. The three civil rights groups allege that by doing so, the Education Department may be dismissing complaints even if students or their families provide ample proof of discrimination, which is unlawful. Representatives believe that the effort closes a critical avenue for students, particularly those with disabilities, to defend their rights to an education in classrooms and or on college campuses. So this is the issue. They're really in in clear language. This is education discrimination against persons of different ethnic backgrounds and disability. Disability is not always a physical handicap. Sometimes it is a learning disability. Sometimes, you know what I mean? So some of these things date back to maybe how kids were classified going through the educational system. And if parents and or their children are trying to petition to be heard, and they have, like they said, created all this criteria that allows them to be weeded out or not heard, or is being placed on a particular department under a specific person who doesn't have a need or have the ability to read these cases, then these students are falling through the cracks. This is one of the many issues that the Department of Education is facing. The question I pose is this a way to show that public school systems and institutions do not work? Because, under the Secretary of Education, her belief system is that a right to choose education or something like that, right of choice, where she is more so concerned about funneling money into, and I'm paraphrasing, but funneling money into private educational systems versus public schools, because she doesn't believe public schools are making an impact. Is this furthering her plan by not hearing those students who are in these systems and they, fall through the cracks? I mean, what do we think about that? Is this a part of a 3, 4, 5 prong plan, or is this generally she hasn't taken the time to evaluate the system and the Department of Education to see where they need to put funds and resources inside of the educational system so that these issues won't happen?
Everything that they do is on message with what they're trying to get accomplished. Absolutely, it's correct. She's trying. This is yet another cog or another reason that she's a way of her finding a reason to continue to push school choice is what they're trying to say. School choice, to get rid of public school and say that we have school choice.
I have a question about school choice.
Yeah.
How does it really work? Because I don't know too many people that have the resources.
Right, and that's the issue. And so they haven't fully outlined what it would look like, because every state is different. Every state's demographics are different. Every state's tax system is different. So what's going to pay? For example, what funds schools the most is the tax base, the tax dollars. So if you take public funding, if you take schools out of neighborhoods in terms of from a public funding perspective, then the neighborhood loses money. Then the Sugar Lands or the Beverly Hills, right, or the Upper East Side of Manhattan, right? You know what I'm saying? These kinds of places could potentially really, really suffer because their tax base is taken away. Now, what they're trying to say is it will create competition from a business standpoint, and so the schools will try to perform better to get more schools or to get more students so they can get more funding or but that's just not the case because school is expensive, right? When you publicly fund school, like here in the state of Texas, it takes about $10 million a year to run a small elementary school. You see what I'm saying? With 400 kids, it takes about $10 million a year, roughly, and so it's expensive. But so now you're putting something on the backs of an already financially hurting population. We have no middle class. The middle class are the ones that go to college the most. You see what I'm saying? So, but they go through school the most. So it's very, very difficult. I'm not sure if I answered your question specifically, but
no, you gave me a lot of information, because I didn't realize until I was an adult how schools were funded.
Yeah.
Of course, the tax systems that people pay for. I didn't realize that contributed to what we consider the flight from suburb to the inner city and vice versa, where people move from around to get to a certain neighborhood because they believe their education system is better in that area. What is that? I feel like, what does that do to neighborhoods? You know what I mean? Like, because the people move to the suburbs because they feel like the suburbs have a better educational system than the inner city. And now when you see the inner cities being built up, then you have people moving back into the inner city and or creating families in the inner city. So the gentrification, so they're moving money around, or, what does that look like? You're pushing people out. Who's going to actually be able to afford or be able to live in places where they can get the best education? Because what happens to the people that are in these areas? And I know that's a conversation for another time, but what happens to the person that live in the areas where now the money, or the persons with the money, are coming into these inner city places, and they're building better school systems where those systems were actually in the suburbs? What happens to the persons there that can't afford to live there anymore? Where do they go? Where do they get? Because you can only bounce them around so many places. They can only bounce from place to place. I don't know if you have a poli-sci answer for me, but it's just something to look for, something to look at. We need to be really mindful of what happens in our communities, in our neighborhoods, what happens to those persons that we're connected to, because we'll wake up one day and some legislation or bill is passed, or proposition on the ballot that no one actually is going out and voting and educating themselves on, and things will change really quickly. And we're trying to figure out what happened to everyone. I mean, it happens that quickly all the time.
Yeah, it's a sad reality. I mean, even earlier this year, there was a report that said HISD, there's like 14 schools on the at-risk list. So if they didn't up their performance by the end of the year, they may close. It's Wheatley, Worthing, Madison, very like historical Black schools. And I think that speaks to what you're saying about the inequality and the resources and the funds. Like, how do these schools get to that point? And why are they getting to that point?
I mean, you hit it. It's funding being pulled, and there are a number. I mean, God, we don't have enough time. We got literally 3 minutes, but it's just funding. It comes down to funding being pulled because of a number of different reasons that are intrasectional. You know what I'm saying? That connect to so many other different reasons. That connect to even more reasons that ultimately stem from a systemic failure of the inner city. You know what I'm saying? Banking practices, policy changes, and redistricting, and it's just all kind of things help create the context for schools to be able to slowly but surely fail. You see what I'm saying? Sharpstown used to, I mean, it's the hood now, right? Here in Houston, it's a area in Southwest Houston, but we were just having this conversation yesterday, or the day before yesterday. Sharpstown used to be, thriving. Gulfton area, the same thing, right? It was an oil and gas community that built all of these huge apartment complexes that are now self-contained with international populations and under the poverty level. So there's so many different reasons why, but again, everything that Betsy DeVos, everything that every Republican that's in power, and let me not even say Republican, that every person that's in power, regardless of their party, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever, they're trying to push that agenda forward. So at the end of the day, she wants to push school choice, period. And this is just some kind of way to do it, and it's really, really sad. It's so it's just sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, I want to end our show on this note. Let's talk about a person, a mover and shaker in history who has done so much, and is finally getting her. I think she has a star on the Hollywood.
Yeah, she does.
Walk of Fame, but now she will get her own exhibit at the National Museum of African American History, and that's Oprah Winfrey. So shout out to Auntie O.
Auntie O.
You want to one clap, Auntie O? You do. You do. So yeah, Auntie O is getting her own exhibit at the National Museum of African American History. And if anyone has known her story, she had a great story considering she grew up in poverty herself. She dealt with a lot of
Sexual abuse.
I mean, you know, she was dealt with her own self-esteem issues, her looks, discrimination in journalism.
Yep.
Her even, you know, being able to walk away from her job to follow her dream. I think that, you know, hearing those stories, she did that years ago, right? 30 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, looking at her now and seeing all she's accomplished and being, you know, the one person that we say, oh my God, she is a billionaire. She's not known from acting or athleticism.
She's a journalist.
She's a journalist. And she
supposed to be
changed the TV
poor
game.
profession.
Right. And she changed the game. She changed the game because journalism did not look like that before Auntie O entered it. And then everybody pretty much created this platform where they wanted to have this interactive feel because she really made it work. Now, she had other persons that were her counterpart on her level that was talk show, but she took talk show to the next level, right?
And she was black doing it.
And she was black doing it. And she created a really
black
great
woman doing it.
Come on.
Has there ever
Has there ever been another like her?
I mean, no. I was about to ask, but I know the answer. I was about to. Let me say it like this. There have been only a handful of black women that have had talk shows.
And just a handful.
In literally one hand.
And I think that it wasn't sustainable for them because it's kind of hard to do what she did and not look cookie cutter.
Yeah,
you have to find your lane. Yeah. And I think that
or create it.
And
that's what she did. She created the lane.
And I think that comes with, you have to do that in time. And a lot of networks aren't willing to take the time to build on that now. Oprah was the anomaly. Which is why
Netflix is winning, but that's a different conversation.
Man, y'all, let me tell y'all.
You got $20 million to drop to these comics. You winning.
Yes.
Listen.
Multiple comics getting
We got to talk. Yeah. We got to listen. Y'all holler at me.
But HBO don't want to drop their bread, though.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Netflix, holler at me. I got something for y'all.
Right.
Anyway, so I think that's amazing. Auntie O getting her own exhibit. We're going to talk about it off air. So we going to... So y'all, I thank y'all for tuning in for Society Now. This has been an amazing show. Thank you for having Carin Pinto in the building.
CP, what up?
She's gonna be back another time, y'all, to give us a whole hour of everything that she got going on.
I love it here.
Yay! My name is Kira Laws. You can follow me on Instagram at the Modern Day Cindy, and this is my handsome co-host.
Yo, what up? This is Kaylin Laws, aka Senor Wapo. Follow me on all social media platforms. Senor Wapo 713. This has been Society Now. And we hope that you learned something. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.